Hello everyone and welcome back to another YouTube tutorial on the JDXi. This obviously is part of the JDXi tutorial series, which I'll put a link up here. It's been a while since I uploaded a video on the JDXi because I've been really busy producing two tracks with two videos for a online music festival called Clownfest, in actual fact Clownfest number 5, and also the 20-minute set for that festival, which I'll put everything up here for you to go and have a look if you choose to do so. So let's have a look at the drum part on the JDXi. So if we select the drum part on the JDXi, the first kit we're greeted with is the 909. Obviously all the classic sounds there. Then you've got the 808. Nice bit of cowbell. We've got the 707 and the 727, which I'm not quite familiar with those drum machines myself. And then we've got the CR78, which is, if you've ever heard the classic Phil Collins In the Air Tonight, you'll recognise the drum machine off that. And I could go on forever. There's a myriad of drum kits already stored on the synthesizer, but it comes into its own when we fire up the patch editor or the JDXi manager, and then we have over 400 different drum sounds, hits, orchestral hits, vocal stabs and stuff like that. But let's fire it up and let's have a look at customizing one of the drum machine kits. Another reason why I love this synth is I've just taken the 909 kit and customized it slightly. Obviously it's not the same as having a drum machine, it never will be, and I haven't got thousands and thousands of pounds to spend on one. But what I've done with this 909 kit is I've pitched the ride cymbal across the keyboard, so you can do a kind of Jeff Mills impersonation to your heart's content, and then I've took the toms and pitch them across the keyboard using the JDXi manager as well. So you can kind of have that kind of 909 techno feel going on. And with the magic of Hollywood, I've now got the JDXi connected to my Windows 10 device with the USB cable. So if I bring up the editor, I discussed how to connect it in a previous video, and I've now got the input and output set to the JDXi, and I'm just going to go to drums, which will bring up that interface. So I'm going to bring this up full screen because it's not very clear to see it like it is. So assume when you hear sounds coming from the JDXi, I'm actually pressing the keys on the keyboard and not doing anything magical on the interface. So let's have a look. So I forgot you will actually be able to see what I'm doing on the JDXi, and I've loaded up the drum part here on the JDXi patch editor, and I've just started again with a standard kit. I've just loaded up a blank fresh pattern and I've got the 909 kit selected on my drum part. So I'm just going to read from the JDXi, even though there isn't really any need, but let's just load in the data from the JDXi onto the drum part. And then we're going to go through each of these parts from top to bottom, left to right. So again, I'll put the chapters down at the bottom of the video so you can skip through and cherry pick what information you need to find out, so you don't have to sit here watching the whole video. So across the top of the key bed, you've obviously got the percussion instruments listed here, which you'll notice reflects the percussion instruments listed here. So make sure when you want to change a sound, which is a percussion number 5, just make sure you're on percussion number 5. And then these ones here where it's just the notes are usually the ones that aren't assigned in the standard kits, but obviously by clicking on them and selecting them you can assign sounds to those notes. So leading from the top, we've got the common section, and part name seems to be appropriate to that key on the keyboard only. It's not the name of the pattern. You can name this if you want to, but I personally just leave it as it is. So moving on, what you'll see here is the assignment type. But let's just look at the mute groups first, only because on a drum machine you've got what's known as a choke function. So if we look at the open hi-hat and the closed hi-hat, see how the closed hi-hat sort of chokes or cuts off the tail end of the open hi-hat. That's That's because if you think about on a real drum machine, the hi-hat is controlled by a pedal, and the pedal opens up the hi-hat or closes it if you don't press the pedal, and you either have an open hi-hat or a closed hi-hat. You can't have the two instruments sounding at the same time because it is the same instrument. It's either open or it's closed. So on a drum machine, that's called the choke function, which you can turn off for creative purposes. So you can see it here in practice on these two keys, and that's all to do with the mute group that those sounds are on. So if we look at the open hi-hat, that is on mute group 1, and the closed hi-hat, that also is on mute group 1. So that means when one sounds and then the other one sounds, it instantly cuts off the first sound, and so on and so forth. Now on the JDXi, you can get really creative and you can have up to 31 mute groups. So if you wanted something like the ride cymbal, and you had multiple pitched ride cymbals across the keyboard like I showed you, you can have them all mute each other depending on which one's pressed. Again, with the toms, I think I set the example one where they all muted each other so the tails wouldn't overlap each other, and the kind of tom mix kind of got a bit muddy. So I hope that makes sense. Again, any questions, just post them in the bottom of the video. So when it comes to the assignment type, obviously don't forget that mute group is one note, this note affecting maybe this note if it's on the same mute group. This is different. Multi and single affects just one key, the sound affects itself, if that makes sense. So I've now gone to C number 5, which is obviously this note, and I'm going to select a ride cymbal, similar to the example I showed you at the beginning of the video. So, oops, let's find a 909 ride cymbal. So this is all good practice for when we come to add sounds onto the key bed. I think it's 269. There we go, 269. So we're on wave number 1, and we'll come to waves shortly, and I've put the wave on, so you can either have it on or off. And now the ride cymbal, obviously if you hold the key down, you've got the long decay. If you bring the key off, it's just instantly cuts the tail end of the ride cymbal off. So for this example of what multi and single does, we need to have a bit of sustain when we let go of the key. So if we go to our envelope, and then I believe the sustain is envelope type number 4. There we go, we've got the tail end. So at the moment we can sound the ride cymbal, and it will, one sound will lead into the next, and so on and so forth. So you can see we've got, it's almost starting to phase because we've got so many notes sounding, and the tail ends are all sustaining into one another. Now if we put it on single, you can see it's only sounding one sound, and then when the next consecutive sound comes along, it cuts itself off. So obviously you can see the difference there, and I'm pretty sure you can think of a couple examples where that would come in handy. Now if we put this onto mute group 1, knowing that the open hat and the closed hat are also on mute group 1, you can see that the closed hi-hat and even the open hi-hat will cut off the sound. That might be useful, although usually on a 909 drum machine I don't think that tends to happen. So if we switch that off, you can see. Moving on, we now have pitch bend range. So I've gone to note B4 and put in an atmosphere sound, which gives us that, and then a pitch bend range of 2 gives us that. So if we set this to something wacky, let's go to 14, this will give us, so that makes perfect sense what that does. Receive expression, receive MIDI expression, and receive MIDI hold information. Not quite sure what that does at the moment, but obviously if you find out or you know, feel free to comment in the comments section below. So on this atmosphere sound, obviously at the moment it's a looping sample or sound. Some sounds or hits, and some actually loop over and over. So obviously this one does. If you turn off sustain, it just does a one shot, and then if you have one shot on as well as sustain on, the one shot will take over and it will still be a one shot. So let's have it on sustain at the moment. Bear in mind that I haven't got to this point yet, but if you adjust some of your envelope times for the amplification of the sound and you have a short sustain or a short decay, this might affect the sustain function here, but obviously it's all about experimenting and having fun. When it comes to the velocity control, because you've got velocity sensitive keys, you can assign sounds to different portions of the velocity. So as you know, in Midi you get from 0 to 127, which is actually 128 values. I've got this sound assigned so that the atmosphere sound will play if I play the keyboard lightly, or that vocal sample will play if I hit the keyboard hard. Now, to control that, we can either have it off, so now we get both sounds sounding, or we can have it on, so I'm in control of what velocity sounds what sound. And then we can have it random, so it seems to be doing more atmospheres than vocals, but it genuinely is random. So let's switch that on, and then we'll discuss how we control the velocities when we look at the wave section of the editor. If we now look at the wave section of the editor, bear with me on this one because this is where we can have a lot of creativity. So essentially what you've got is you've got 4 waves or 4 separate sounds that you can assign to one note on the keyboard. Not only that, but with each wave we can have it either mono, so it will just sound, for example, the atmosphere, or we can have it stereo, so we can have one sound on the left and one sound on the right. So let's get something in the higher frequency range. Let's get an open hat. So if I press now, you can see, hopefully you can hear the stereo there. So that's just on the one wave. On the second wave, where I've got the woo sound, we can also add another sound on the right of the stereo image. So let's find another vocal sample, make it interesting. Let's have a look. So that's on the lower velocities, and that's when I hit the note hard. So you can see we can kind of build up layers and layers of sound. So what you've got to bear in mind is if you make changes here on wave 1, make sure you've got wave on and off for wave on for wave 1. So if we switch it off, we get nothing until we hit it hard, switch it back on, and we enable that sound to be heard through the keyboard. Then next we have the gain for each of the 1 to 4 waves individually. So you can see I've got the atmosphere and the open hi-hat set on 12, plus 12, sorry, and obviously I can make it sound quieter. Let's pump it up a bit, and then the same applies to the vocal samples. If I put that to plus 12, it is considerably louder. With the random pan, this is where it kind of comes into its own when we have a sustaining waveform like the atmosphere. So let me see if I can find another kind of sustaining sound for the right hand sound on wave number 1. Should we try an organ? They're usually sustaining. There we go. So random pan, which is on, won't actually work until we select a random pan depth. Let's just see. It's still not panning. Let's just also do a left pan on here. Or is it because, hold on, it's each time you press the note. Let's just put that to 0. So you can see both the atmosphere and the organ are kind of bouncing across the stereo image. If we pan just here, it really is a bit of experimentation. So if we put the turn random pan off and adjust the actual pan, you can see that's kind of having an effect on the sound. Let's just do pan on the time variant amplification. So you can see that's kind of having an effect as well. So let's put that to right. Let's put this to left. I can let go of the key, I guess. Let's have the random pan depth all the way up, and so that's not changing. Let's put the random pan on. So we get, you can see what kind of effects we're having, and then let's have the alternate pan depth on all the way up on left and right. Kind of gets confusing, but if you work out or can explain how that works, then please let me know. Obviously you can sort of see what pan does and random pan does, so maybe that's enough to have the creativity that you need. So I've gone ahead and reset all the pan, random pan depth and all that, so we can move on and have a look at the next function, which is the frequency cross modulation, which to me is a bit like ring modulation, or kind of bit crush but not bit crush on an effects unit. So if we switch it on, oh, hitting that note too hard, nothing happens until we increase the depth of the effect, and it gives us that ringy kind of sound, and then adjusting the color will give us different effects on the frequency cross modulation. So level just is the level of that particular sound. If we turn this down, we still get the level intact for W2, which is at 127, which is maximum. So obviously that is pretty self-explanatory. Pan we've kind of already covered. Coarse tune, let's have a look. Is obviously taking the notes up by semitones, I guess. Fine tune is taking it up and down by cents, and then the velocity range upper and lower we've discussed when we looked at the velocity control. So obviously this note, when I play it softly between a velocity of 1 and 99, we get this sound, and then if I hit the key, we get wave number 2 sounding, which only comes into effect when we go over a velocity value of 100 and all the way up to 127. Now when it comes to velocity fade upper and velocity fade lower, it's, how do I explain this? It's kind of like the envelope of the sound based on the velocity. Let's have a look. So, okay, let's go back to that one, and okay, so we've got the atmosphere sound is blending in with the vocal samples. So if we set this just to 100, and we set this, maybe that one needs a bit of experimentation. We'll come back to that one. Okay, so I've kind of worked it out. If you, with this setting, with nothing in the upper and lower, I can either have a soft key press and it will do the atmosphere and the organ, or hard key press will do the vocals. Now if I set this upper level a bit higher, you can see you've kind of got the organ and the atmosphere coming in over the top of the vocals when I hit the key hard. There we go, and then obviously I cut that off there. So that's set on the atmosphere and the percussion. And then I guess if I do the lower fade level, there we go. So you can kind of overlap one sound into another. Where would that be useful? With snare drums or instruments where you hit it harder, it sounds different but not totally different. So you've got like I don't know, a bongo where you can give it a light tap and it makes a sound, and then a bongo the same bongo, but you give it a harder slap, and it makes a different sound, but you still have some of the sound it would make in there if you hit it softer, and vice versa. So if you hit it hard, you still have some of the softer sound, but if you hit it softer, it's a different sound, but you still have some of the harder hitting sound, if that makes sense. It makes sense to me anyway. So I guess we have kind of covered the waves that you can have assigned to each note. So you can have 4 sounds assigned to a note, but they will be mono, but you can kind of pan them. Or you can have 8 separate sounds in the stereo field. So you'll have 4 on the left, 1, 2, 3, 4 waves, and 4 on the right, 1, 2, 3, 4 waves. Don't forget to switch them on if you're using them or want to hear them. And then you can also mess about with the pan, the random pan, and the alternate pan as well. So a lot to keep you entertained. Now with the time variant filter, you can obviously have, I keep saying obviously, but it's not obvious sometimes, is it? It's just habit. But you can have low pass filter, band pass filter, high pass filter, peaking filter, and then low pass filter number 2 and low pass filter number 3. So I've put a bit of sustaining white noise on this key here. So if I adjust the cutoff and resonance very carefully, because I don't want to hurt anyone's ears, we can see we can kind of get those CO2 cannons on the go, and that kind of makes sense. With the cutoff velocity curve, we can obviously have it fixed, which gives us the same consistent sound on the filter, and then we can increase the curve and the sensitivity. So how hard you hit the note will affect the cutoff and resonance. It's very subtle. It is very subtle, but you can kind of see what's happening there. Now the time variant filter can be used without any envelope depth. That gives us just a standard consistent sound. But if I just quickly put the cutoff point starting at 0, and then I turn the time variant filter envelope depth up to maximum, we can control the resonance and cutoff over time, and that time is defined by these levels here and the envelope times here. So we're kind of opening, closing, and opening the envelope again with attack, decay, sustain, and release, etc. etc. So even though the JDXi has a myriad of nice zappy sounds, using the filter or opening the filter envelope over time will give you some interesting sounds. Then if I apply it to a vocal sample, you can see that the filter envelope is being affected, either open, closed, over time, if that makes sense. But again, I could spend hours and hours explaining all these settings. You can look at the manual, or it's just a lot of fun just to experiment with these settings and see what sounds you can come up with. So if I just reset the filter envelope back to 0 and then open the cutoff, and also change it back to white noise. So just open the filter up there. Obviously this is just consistent over the sound because we haven't got the envelope set. We can do the same opening and closing of the envelope with the amplification or the volume of the sound. So with the level, it does exactly what you expect it to do. And then I think the level velocity sensitivity, if we put this up, obviously the harder you hit the note, the velocity sensitivity is applied to the amplification in some way. Again, it's all about experimenting. There's different velocity level curves that you can play around with. The relative level, again, adjusts the loudness of the sound. I think if you've got the level turned up all the way up here, it doesn't affect it anymore. So it's just kind of like a fine tune on the amplification of the sound. Again, you've got pan, And I'm not too sure if this is an overall pan for all of the sounds combined, possibly, or if it's on. So let's have a look. So yeah, this is like, these are like global to the entire waves that you set here, because as I'm going here, they're not changing. Let's just do that down to 69. Go back to wave number 1. Yeah, so these, pretty much sure these are global to the whole sound that you've got set on the note. So let's go back to the white noise. So we've got pan, we've got random depth and alternative pan depth, which we discussed earlier. And then with the amplification adjustments, you can also set the envelope, which basically means affecting the amplification of the sound over time. So it's a lot similar to the time variant filter. And let's have a little play. So we've got the sound just coming in and it is consistent. So let's do level 1 and let's set level 1's time. So we get a fade in. Level 2's level, I think, might be that how long the note is held for. Let me just move this over so we can see a bit more clearly. So let's set these to random times. So let's have it so it doesn't hold after the attack time. And then is it the decay time? Let's set these all quite short. Maybe, oh, there we go. So level 4, or envelope time 4, is the actual sustain after you've released the note. So decay. Decay is applied while you're holding the note. So let's have a short decay time. Let's have a short sustain. Yeah, so you can sort of see as you're affecting the envelope, it's kind of affecting the attack, sustain, decay and release of the sound, of the volume. Same as with the voltage, the time variant filter. So you can kind of see what's going on there. Let's just see what happens when we put it on a an organ. So that's the volume. Let's just put it on the filter. So let's increase the depth. So you can see we're controlling the volume and the filter and the amplification of the sound. Maybe going into a bit too much detail now, but it's there if you need it. Okay, so we're now at the bottom row, which is the pitch. So I've now gone and got the cowbell on the 909 kit selected, and if I adjust the pitch and send it down, up to a C sharp, you can see the pitch adjusts. So we can sort of course affect the tuning of the sound. Let's just see if this is global. Yep, it's global. Else, oh, actually, hold on. If we put that back to C sharp and then we go back to W1, yep. So this is the pitch is now a global setting because obviously you have the coarse or fine tuning pitch on each individual wave, and then you can obviously fine tune the sound. I had it all the way up to 50 cent, but now it's on 0, so it's definitely a C4 pitch. And then random pitch depth, if I put it to something like 4, this was a bit of a head scratcher because nothing's happening, and again these are in cent, so if I put it all the way up to 1100, you can see we can get quite wacky sounds there. So I don't know when you'd use that, but that's quite fun to play around with. So if we set this back down to C4, we also have an envelope for the pitch, so we can affect the pitch or changes in the pitch over the time of the sound. So let's just see if I can get a really long percussion sound that would be really fun to play around with. Should we go for a tom? Let's have a look. If we go for a low tom, medium toms, let's go for a 909 low tom. So that's on that key there. So with the envelope depth that's set to 0, you don't really hear any changes, but the envelope depth turned all the way up, we can start to affect the sound, the pitch over time. So that's kind of, should we see if we can get it to go up and then down? So that's going up, and then envelope time number 4, let's set that to maximum. Let's make these really short. There we go. It's going up and then down. Envelope velocity. Doesn't really do anything. Again, we can experiment with these, or you can experiment with those to get some crazy or very creative sounds. So when it comes to editing the sounds assigned to each note on the patch editor, I think we're pretty much done. The sounds that you want to assign to the notes, how they behave with each other, or how they behave as part of a mute group. So you've got that one note cuts off another note when you press it. We've got the sounds that you can assign to each key. You can have up to 8 different sounds, but they will be on the left and the right, or you can have 4 separate mono sounds all sounding together. We can have filters and adjust the amplification. We can adjust the filter over time with the envelope, and we can adjust the amplification of the sound over time with the amplification envelope. We can pitch the sound, and we can change the pitch over the time that the sound is audible. And we can also, haven't actually spoke about output, so let's do a little chapter on output. So to be honest with you, when it comes to the effects on the JDXi, I think we're probably better off dealing with that in a separate video, only because the way the effects can be chained together or directly sent to the delay and reverb, and there's a bit of menu diving to do to get the most out of the effects. I think, yeah, that's definitely a separate video, which will be put on the playlist as soon as I get around to recording it. So that's basically a whirlwind tour of how to customize a drum kit on the JDXi manager. Obviously, if you download it, and it's going to save you a lot of time and head scratching, you know, make a donation to the guys that developed the software and the application. We are going to look at the Prodigy's Omen drum loop as what this part of this series is all about achieving, so we get a feel for putting the different parts together and adding the effects and building the drum kits, etc, etc. So as we build the kit now, we'll actually program it into the sequencer and have a little look of how the sequencer works with the drum part. So what we need to do first in order to program in the Prodigy beat, which is 4 measures, is we'll customize the kit. So if you start with either a blank pattern, or the pattern that you know if you've watched the Digital Synth Part 1 video where we do the lead, have it on that same pattern. And then once we've got the drum beat actually programmed in, then we'll go back to the Digital Synth Part 1 in a separate video, and we'll layer over the lead for the Omen track. So what we should end up with is this, which is 4 measures with a drum roll on the last measure. So if we start out with the 909 kit number 1 as the default, we can start editing it so it's more customized to the Prodigy track. And you'll notice if you are starting afresh with a new pattern, then your pattern length will only be 1 measure. But once we've customized the kit, we'll look at increasing the pattern length to 4 measures. So with the standard TR 909 kit loaded up, let's look at customizing this for the Prodigy beat. So if we select bass drum number 1, and we want this to be an 808 kick, which is number 5 in the list, and that will give us that sound. There's no changes. I've got the gain on 12. I think all this is default. So let's move on to the next note, which is the closed hi-hat. So make sure we select it in the editor and we want this to be the 909 closed hi-hat is fine. So let's move on to the second hi-hat. I'm not sure what PHH stands for, part hi-hat. I'm sure you can comment if you know. This is a 307. Sometimes it's just easier to scroll down and find it, which is tambourine number 1, which gives us that sound. We're going to add a bit of compression on the effects to that just to bring it out a bit more, but we'll come back to that. The snare drum number 3, we're going to have as a 145, which will give us a lo-fi snare, which is quite nice and kind of like a break beat kind of snare, isn't it? Almost like a jungle, an amen break kind of snare. And then cymbal number 1, I think we're going to keep as the standard 909 crash. Yep. And then snare drum number 2, which is used for the fill on measure number 4, we will have a 154, which if I can't quite remember what it gives us, but it gives us an SF snare P, whatever an SF snare P is. It's this one. Is it? No, snare drum. It's that one. So that's for the fill at the end. So that's pretty much done for customizing the sounds and the note assignment. So let's have a look at effecting the reverb and the compression on some of the drum sounds, just so that we can bring certain sounds out like the tambourine in the mix. Okay, so for the effects, we're going to use, well, I personally like to use the controls here and the menu, only because it's a little bit more hands-on than using the editor. So for the bass drum, we're not going to have any effects, but for the closed hi-hat, we're going to add some reverb. So if we just select reverb, no matter what gain we have on the reverb, we don't get reverb, because we need to send the sound to one of the effects first. So we'll cover this in another video, but you can send effects number 1 to effects number 2, and you can send them then to the delay and reverb, or you can have various amounts of delay and reverb on either effects number 1 and effects number 2. So you can kind of like double up on the reverb, etc., etc., etc. But for this video, we're just going to stick to simple reverb and compression. So for the closed hi-hat and the sounds just with reverb on, we are going to use effects number 2. So there we go, we get now the delay and reverb. Now we don't want any delay, we just want reverb. So let's turn the reverb all the way up for now. And then if we go into the menu and go across to effects edit, enter that. Now we're looking for effects number 2, delay reverb level, and let's pump that all the way up, so shift and the plus button. So we get a nice bit of reverb, and we can always tune it down to suit. And then on the tambourine sound, we're gonna just have a bit of compression. So let's switch off. Actually, let's put all the effects on, but with this note selected. Let's go back to effect number 1 and assign the output just direct to the delay and reverb. So we don't want to send effects number 1, which we're going to add delay and reverb onto. We don't want to send it through to effects number 2 to then add some more delay and reverb, if that makes sense. It's you kind of have to experiment with this bit, because it's a little bit complicated. But do not worry, because it'll all sound good in the end. So we want to send the output of effects number 1 direct. So you can see effects number 1 is now skipping over and going to delay and reverb. So on effects number 1, let's send the reverb level, which it already is at maximum, and that will give us a nice bit of reverb. Now you'll notice when I go back to the closed hi-hat, there is no effect on effect number 2. It's just going through directly, no change to the delay and reverb. With the tambourine, we just want to add a bit of compression. So effect number 1, let's add compression just to bring it out in the mix a little bit more. So the drum part is unique with the effects, that on each note you can have either effect number 1, effect number 2, or no effects whatsoever. But be careful, because now we've got compression on the drum part. If we go to the digital synth or any of the other parts, you can only have compression, because if we select distortion for synth part number 1, when we go back to the drums, our effect is distortion. So this is almost like having separate guitar pedals out in your studio or your living room or your bedroom, wherever. So if you've got distortion, you can only have distortion across the board. So let's put that back to compression, and you'll see that digital part number 1 is back on compression. So that you can only have so many effects units, so to speak, in play at any one time. But there is ways of adding distortion onto the digital synth through editing the tone. With the compression, we can adjust the ratio and the threshold and the gain, etc., etc. But obviously, we're best leaving that for another video. So let's move on to snare drum number 3, which is this sound, and we're just going to add a bit of compression and reverb. So simply, all we do is just make sure that the effects on and off are selected for for effect number 1, the delay and reverb, which will give us that. If that's a bit loud, we don't want to touch the effects here. We'll just put the amplification of the sound down a little bit, and I'm not sure if we've got a bit too much reverb. Does the reverb affect that? Yeah, so the reverb is global. So these are, almost think of these as outboard effects units. Okay, that's beginning to sound okay. The cymbal is literally just as it is. We probably put a bit of compression on it if we want, but I think it'd be a bit too much. And then snare drum number 2. Let's just add a bit of reverb, so we can use effects number 2 now to send reverb backwards and forwards, because we're just going through effects number 2. There we go, and that is pretty much it for the sounds. Obviously, you know, if you want to adjust them to suit you, then feel free. Okay, now it's time for the fun part. We're going to start programming in the drum pattern. So let's just get out of the menu, and if we hold down shift, we can see number 1 here is lit. This means that we're on measure number 1, and I can't select any subsequent measures out of the 4 available to us because this pattern is only 1 measure long. So let's put in the most common drum instrument, and then we can copy and make this pattern 4 bars or 4 measures in length. So if we select the closed hi-hat, and we want the closed hi-hat to be on all of the beats, so that's 1, 5, 9 and 13. We will have it running while we're going, and then the tambourine is on everything except for the last measure, but we can come to that. So that gives us that sound, and then we can adjust the closed hi-hat if we want to, just to bring it out above the tambourine. And now what we'll do is we'll copy this, and we'll take out some of the tambourine where there's the drum roll at the end. So if we go to menu and cursor across to, we get to pattern length, enter that, and we want the pattern length to be 4 measures. Enter that, and it's asking us, do we want to copy what we've done on measure 1 to the subsequent measures? Yes, we do. So it's enter for yes, and that should give us measure 1, measure 2, etc., etc. Now, the way you get to your other measures is you hold down shift, and then we can get to measure number 2, measure number 3, measure number 4. So we want to go to measure number 4 and take out the closed hi-hat and the tambourine to make way for the drum roll. So on measure number 4, if we select the closed hi-hat, which it's already on, just take it off, and then the tambourine, we don't want any tambourine on measure number 4. Now let's go ahead and put in the bass drum. So let's go back to shift and number 1, and make sure I'm hitting these notes as hard as I can, because it also will record the velocity. So hit it not too hard, but give it a good whack. And we want the bass drum to be on 1 and 7 on pattern number 1. Sorry, measure number 1, measure number 2, 1 and 7. Shift, arms aren't long enough. And number 3, 1 and 7. And shift, pattern number 4, 1 and 7. So let's now do the snare drum, and this will be on 5 and 11 on every measure. So let's do it, we're on 4, let's do it on number 4, so 5 and 11. Let's get back to 3, 5 and 11. Nearly took out the microphone. Number 2 on 5 and 11. Nearly took out the webcam. And number 1, 5 and 11, which will give us. Okay, so obviously the tempo is a little bit slow, so let's crank up the tempo to around about 140. That sounds a little bit better. So now let's put the cymbal in. So hit the cymbal so we get full velocity, and we want that on measure number 1, which we're already on. We want that to be on step number 1, and then if we go to measure number 4, we want this to be on 1 and 13. Obviously you can play this in with actually live recording, but sometimes I just prefer to enter it in manually like this, and it's good for tutorial purposes. So let's now do the last snare, which is snare number 2, and this will be on the last step, number 4, which we're already on, and this will be on, make sure I give it a good hit, 5, 7 and 16. No, so 5, 7 to 16, and that gives us. Now you can see the snare drum here is a bit loud, so I've just turned down the level of snare drum number 2 down, and what I'm also going to do is just pitch that up slightly, because in my eyes it's just a little bit too low in the pitch. So let's make sure we've got number 2 selected on the editor, and then for the course tune we just put it up to 4. Yep, let's go for 4. If you'll let me see what that sounds like. Okay, so you can see it's fairly simple once you get the grip on it to program in a drum beat. So I think for the length of this video and me constantly waffling on, we'll leave the drum programming there. Let's just save it. So if we go to menu, if we exit our menu, if we hold down Shift and press menu, we won't bother naming it at the moment. You can name it if you want to, but we'll just enter that. Yes, we want it on E21 or whatever pattern you're using. Do you want to write the program? Yes, we do. Writing, and that is job done. So one last cool thing to show you while we're on the drum part, and it's not really applicable to this pattern, is the shuffle or the swing function, which is only available in firmware version 1.50 and above. But let's have a little look at it now. So let me slow down a little bit. You can do this while the pattern is running, but because you probably won't be able to hear my voice over the top of it, we'll do it while it's not running. So obviously we've got no shuffle or swing at the moment, but if you hit enter, you can then decide using the buttons, the part buttons, which part to affect the swing. So we're just going to have, with enter being held, the drums affected by the swing. So with enter still held, we can then use the LFO depth here, and whether you can see it on the screen, it's not quite clear. I need a better webcam. We can adjust the shuffle percentage. So let's just put it onto 60, 61, 62, and then if we play, we can add a bit of shuffle to the pan, but that's not applicable for this drum beat. So let's just enter and then do the depth and put it down, back down to 50%, which gives us back to normal. So that's basically the drums on the JDXi. The only thing we didn't cover was the sidechain compression, where we can take one of the drum parts, usually the kick drum, and use it to affect the volume levels of the digital and analog parts. Possibly put that in the effects video, who knows. So if you want to go ahead and have a little crack at adding the Omen part over the top of the drum beat, you've now got something to work with. Obviously, all the videos in this series are linked in the description. I've put them all in one playlist so you can go and find them. The benefit of this video series as well is, instead of me keep waffling on in vast detail, I'll always put the chapters at the bottom of the video so you can skip or cherry pick to the parts that you need to know or are interested in. So if you want to be notified when the next video goes up, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. It's been a pleasure, and I will see you next time.